I'm almost 50, strong, clear, energized. Training hard, living clean, fully alive. But it didn't start here. 30 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I felt hopeless. But I chose a different path. No meds, just science, discipline, and results. Now I'm symptom-free and asking the tough questions that move us all forward. This is Hope and Health. Let's go. Hello and welcome to Hope and Health. I'm Mathew Embry, and today we're talking to Jon Chandonnet, an MS advocate, author, and coach who's inspired thousands of people around the world. Jon, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me today.
Mathew, I really appreciate it. I really do.
You know, Jon, it's rare that I get to interview one of my heroes, and you are one of them. I have followed you on social media for some time, and your story, your journey, your tenacity, what you put into the world is truly inspiring. For me, it motivates me. Your posts have kept me going more often than you will probably ever know. So let's start right at the beginning. 1996, what happens?
I'm a grad student at MIT. I've got the world by the tail. I'm on the basketball court playing intramural basketball to blow some steam off. And I have an episode on the court where I lose fine motor control of my right arm and right leg. I'm like a spaz on the court. I'm trying to will my body forward, but yet my leg is rooted to the floor like a tree stump. And I'm like, I was an athlete, you know, I had played basketball, lacrosse, soccer, was training for my black belt in Taekwondo, knew my body well. And here's my body going haywire. I had no idea what was going on. Called for a sub, raised my hand, said, I need to come out of the game. Thought I was pulled muscle, tried to stretch it out. It didn't resolve, limped around campus for the next month. And then finally gave in and got an MRI. Went and got the MRI, went to doctor afterwards, and I was like psyched to have it all behind me. I'm like, God, I can't wait to results, move forward, boom. No. The doctor's like, Jon, you've got a couple lesions on your brain. You've got MS, multiple sclerosis. I'm like, oh my God, no way. What does that mean? You know? I had family friends who had it, who after, 20 years were in wheelchairs, incapacitated. I'm like, I don't have any time for this. And, I willed my way through it. I got the grad, I finished the degree, found out, I had relapsing remitting, did a bunch of research to understand what it could do. I'm at MIT, I'm a rational guy. I'm trying to figure out, okay, so what's it do? It does a lot of bad things, it causes paralysis, incontinence, brain fog, none of which are any fun. And I'm 27, I got the world by the tail, about to explode into life with a degree that would allow me to have a front row seat on the exploding digital revolution. And so, you know what I did? I left it on the tarmac in a box at Boston Logan Airport and jetted off for my West Coast dream, working for a startup internet technology company to live my dream. And I didn't really associate with it. I was in denial. Okay. I was in the early stages of healing, and I was deep in denial. But it worked. It worked for the first, 6.5 years. I ran marathons, triathlons. I climbed Mount Whitney, Mount Shasta, Mount Tyndall, a couple of the other 14,000 foot Sierra peaks. And I put my life on accelerate to see how far and how fast I could go until the disease told me to stop.
Okay, so before that time, you're diagnosed, you're playing basketball, you're living this life, you're ready to ready to just kind of run as fast as you can. Now, did the doctors at that time give you any treatments? Did they give you any advice? Like, what were you told after you got your diagnosis?
Yeah. Great question. I did see a neurologist. His name was Dr. Book, so, he's a really smart guy at MIT. And he wanted me on, the first MS drug, which was beta serum, I think.
Yep.
And I wasn't ready, dude. I wasn't ready to give into it because having to inject myself with that shot nightly, or I don't know how frequently you had to inject. I don't even remember, but that would have had to associate with the disease in my consciousness on a regular routine basis. And I wasn't ready to associate and say, I've got it. So I put in the box, as I said, and lived in denial for as long as I could.
So you go into a state of denial, but you also go into a state of hyperactivity. You're doing tons of physical exercise, you're working, you're doing your thing, you're living your life. What slows you down?
Right. So about 6 years into the diagnosis, I started to get symptoms. And so from 6 years in to 8 years in, after the diagnosis, life went away from me. Pretty much everything went away from me. My mind went in circles. I was failing online tests for things that I knew well enough to teach, but yet I couldn't keep the concepts straight. My mind and my mouth lost connection. And so I wanted to say something, but it wouldn't come out. And when I did talk, my speech was slurred, and it was I talked like there's a bunch of cotton balls in my mouth, and I was falling downstairs. Man, I bought a house and we redid it, and I slipped down the stairs, and I was in big trouble, and I knew I was in trouble.
And I think this is one of the challenges with multiple sclerosis is that it's a slow burn. You get your diagnosis, and what a lot of people don't understand is that it doesn't start to really impact you, past 5 years. And then for some people, it can be even 10 to 15 years before you start getting some pretty significant symptoms. Now, for you, you start getting them around year 6 to year 8, where now you're having mobility issues, cognitive issues, things are on decline. Now, would you say you were in a progressive state at that point? And did you start to do anything about it?
I would say, in fact, we went to see my neurologist to figure out what's going on. And I started, I didn't take drugs for the first 6 years. And then 6 years in, I started to take the drugs because my wife wanted me, who was my fiance at the time, wanted me to do everything to keep the drug at bay. So I agreed to try all the different drugs at the time, the beta interferons, Avonex, which they kicked my butt. And, I read about episodes in the book where, I had a terrible episode where I woke in the middle of the night shivering and felt like I had paralysis in my whole body. So, I went through that period where I was trying to figure out I'm in decline because I know I'm in decline. So to your point, I know I'm in decline, and I'm exploring all the options and looking for answers. And there weren't any, other answers other than try a new MS drug. Okay. Which we all know the MS drugs don't heal the MS. They are meant to slow the progression, but that they don't heal the body,
So at that point, were you experiencing a lot of side effects? Was that compounding the problems you were having?
Yes. The side effects, yes, of the drug. They kicked my, I'd like to use another word, but they kicked my butt. And just the fatigue. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what MS fatigue is. And I'm like, okay, is it MS fatigue or is it from the drug? And I had no idea. I just knew that I had all these symptoms, and I was in big trouble. I was 35. I was just married. My wife and I wanted to have a son. And I know if I went to the doctor to say, do I have secondary progressive? It would have been secondary progressive because my doctor told me I had secondary progressive 3 years ago. And so I know what that feels like. And I remember what it felt like then. And, you know, I, I could put two and two together and I can get four. Okay. And so I I imagine I was at that point or right below that point 21 years ago. And I knew I had to do something. And so I did something radical.
What did you do?
I did a raw vegan detox. I went to a raw vegan healing center in San Diego called Optimum Health Institute. And for 4 months, I asked my employer for 4 months to take off to improve my health, committed corporate suicide, stepped away, and I threw everything at it. Within 3 weeks there, my mobility was improving. Like I could take long-legged steps. I could feel my body. And I knew things were changing. And I doubled down. I burned the ship and stayed there for 4 months. And, so I was eating raw food. And so the whole theory behind raw food is raw food reduces the metabolic load of metabolizing food. And the benefit of that is it takes less energy for digestion. So instead of spending 12 to 14 hours of my day digesting food, because I was eating raw food and juices primarily, it was only spending about 4 to 5 hours a day. And so, that was like intermittent fasting for, 19, 20 hours a day. And that was a very healing state for the body. And basically what it did is it flushed out all the inflammation. All right. And I didn't have blood work done to know for sure that that's what happened. But having done it once and then now going through the process again, because I started a second healing journey 3 years ago, I know that's what I did 21 years ago. I sucked out all the inflammation.
Okay, so 21 years ago, you're an absolute free fall neurologically when it comes to multiple sclerosis. You're struggling. You do something that, I try to advise people in the chronic illness community. You've got to put yourself first at one point. I understand we've all got stresses of life with jobs and all these types of things, but your health is paramount. If you're not good, the rest of your world's not good. So you take 4 months and you start a raw vegan diet. Now, what were you eating during that time?
Right. What was I eating? So I would drink about 10 ounces of wheatgrass a day, fresh juiced wheatgrass, which is a blood cleanser, and then raw juices. So I do 3.5 days a week. I would purely do a juice fast, celery, cucumber, and so forth. And for 3.5 days, and then 3.5 days of raw food, which, breakfast was cucumber, celery, and as a treat, tomatoes. And then lunch was like a seed cheese, which is fermented seeds as the protein source, and then different vegetables. And then dinner would be a raw dinner as well of another type of seed cheese for the protein. That's the important thing. And then a bunch of different veggies. So, I definitely cut the calories, Matthew. I cut the calories big time. Yeah. I went from 167 to 134 in 5 weeks.
Okay, so on this, are you still taking a disease-modifying therapy, or are you still on MS drug at this time?
Nope. I left my Copaxone at home. I left my Lipitor at home. So I stopped any drug. I stopped any drug. Okay. And people will say, "You're crazy, Jon. You're crazy." Well, I mean, there's some healing theory behind these things. And so I was like, I'm gonna go all in to heal my body.
So you start feeling mobility's coming back. What about cognition? Were you thinking better?
Yes. Yes. Cognition came back again, three to 4 weeks in. I mean, mobility took longer, um, but cognition did. The brain fog, it cleared. And you got on, I was 35. And so doing this as a 35-year-old man is different than healing as a 55-year-old man. I know that because I'm on a second healing journey. And your body is able to do things faster. But that being said, you can, I am 55 and I'm going to heal my body again. It's just going to take more time. But that's the thing, Matthew, the body wants to heal. You know that. You know the body wants to heal if you put the right stuff in it.
Okay, so you start to heal. What comes next? Do you stay on this program? What does the next 10 years of your life start to look like?
Yeah, right. So I stayed 100% raw vegan for 3 more years, which was amazing. And my wife and we had a son, and I went back to work. But then, I slowly, too much stress, and I didn't totally stay on the diet, started to introduce other foods that probably were not the best, different grains that my body didn't react favorably to. So, over that 10-year period, I wrote a book. I wrote a book about my healing journey called Shadow Summit. And it was, I had improved my health considerably, but then it reached a high point, and then there was a slow, gradual decline, and then I got divorced. I got divorced, 8 years ago, and that whole process was brutal because it was emotionally brutal. And you know what? I had to learn to cook for myself, and cooking raw vegan and preparing raw vegan foods a lot of work, and just cooking for yourself in general. And so I was cooking like gluten-free pastas and different rices, but all those grains and all that sugar was inflammatory in my body. And so that's what exacerbated things, and that's what caused me to slip into secondary progressive 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, my son was going to graduate high school, and I knew I was in trouble because I was going to have to fully take care of myself. And that's when I found Terry Walls and the Walls Protocol.
Now, Jon, before we get into that, I think it's important for our audience to think about and to talk about how challenging it can be to stick to a disciplined lifestyle. I think, I talk a lot about this online. I mean, there's things that start to happen in our lives, like a divorce or other stressful things for other people that can really start to shake you. Can you speak to the challenge of maintaining that kind of discipline?
Yes, it's an everyday thing. You have to change all your habits. I had to change my shopping habits. I had to change my food preparation habits. But the thing is, as soon as you make the decision to change the habit and integrate new habits into your life, you have to prepare food every day. And so you could either choose to prepare the food that's going to exacerbate things, or choose to prepare the food that's going to allow your body to be in a better state. And so that's the choice. You choose. And Matthew, the whole question on that is your ego. The ego is a really strong force in your life. And you have to battle your ego because I thought I was entitled to eat whatever I wanted. You can't tell me what to eat. I can have that slice of pizza. I can have that bowl of ice cream. I can have those cookies. I can eat whatever the F I want. I can eat whatever I want. Who are you to tell me? Well, you know what? No one's telling me anything. It's my body. It's my body that's in charge. It's not me and it's not my mind. It's what my body needs to run its best.
I think you face challenges that so many people with multiple sclerosis and chronic illness do, whether it's a divorce or other stresses in life. You get to the point of your life, your kid, your child, your son is now graduating high school. You're about to enter a brand new phase. You're still struggling with MS symptoms. Is this what's going on at this point?
Yes, correct. Yes.
And you decide to make another change in your life to take control. What do you do?
Right. So the MS had progressed to secondary progressive, officially, the doctor said. And that's when I went cold turkey again. I went cold turkey 2 days before Thanksgiving, 2 years ago. And I decided to go on the paleo keto diet following the Walls protocol. And so I get 70% of my calories from vegetable fats like coconut, avocado, olive oil, all those oils, flax oil. So 70% from those oils, 25% from protein. And I started eating animal protein. And then 5% from carbs, because carbs throw you out of keto. And so I went cold turkey following the protocol. And so I spend 4 to 6 hours a day now on my healing.
Got it. So, I mean, for people who don't know, for audiences who don't know much about multiple sclerosis, secondary progressive disease is no joke. This is when things have gotten aggressive. The outcomes for that aren't good. You're being told this, which must have been a shock. You take action and really get after your diet. And for other people who don't know who Dr. Terry Walls is, another person with multiple sclerosis who's recovered through nutrition. We definitely share her journey on MS Hope as much as we possibly can. So, Jon, you start this new program. You're eating tons of vegetables. I'm assuming, animal protein as well. What starts to happen?
Right. And, you said not tons of vegetables. I have to watch the total number of carbs, tons of fats, tons of vegetable fats. So what starts to happen is first of all, the pain. So, MS pain is a big deal. And because it's inflammation, that literally what's causing the pain is inflammation in the body. And that's very uncomfortable. It's like, it can be brutal to sleep. Like, sleeping sucks, or it did, because your body is like, gets so achy at night. And you don't really, like, part of it is like, you want to go to sleep, but you don't want to go to sleep because you don't want to wake up. So it's a double-edged sword. And so that was 2 years ago. But over that process, I've been working with a holistic medical doctor who's been testing my blood. I'm a naturopath. a functional medical doctor testing my blood, and the inflammation has radically shifted. And so over that 2-year period, the inflammation shifted, which is beneficial. And so on top of that, I exercise every day. I walk at the beach. I walk with walking sticks. So my arms do a lot of the work, and, I can't go all that much distance, but, you might have seen the video of me online. What I do, I hold on to that rail as I cross the bridge, and I'm trying to get my mobility back. And it's a slow progression, but I feel my feet again, Matthew. Feeling my feet is like a victory. I can feel my feet in bed. And I couldn't feel my feet. I couldn't feel my feet for years. And you know what? I didn't know I lost the feeling. You know why? Because you don't know you can't feel. You only know when you can feel. And so you don't know. But I know now because I can feel again. And that's a big, big deal. And so I've got the newbie E-stem machine to bring my nerves back, that I use an hour a day. And I roll with the rowing machine half an hour a day. And I spend all this time preparing my new food. And so, as I said, I commit all this time to healing. It's like a full-time job for me. And I have a job as well. I'm a coach. I have a well-being system that I coach on based on what I learned in the book. But to your point, Matthew, the number one priority is me and my health. And I commit all my energy to my health. And so, the phone doesn't matter. Yeah. I mean, I don't watch TV. Maybe I spend an hour or half an hour a day at the end of the day, but I don't spend any time doing that. I spend time reading, reflecting. I meditate, and I'm going hard again on healing. And I don't know how long it's going to take, Matthew, right? I mean, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know. And I don't really care. And that's the thing with the ego is, I don't deserve this, I shouldn't have to deal with this. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter what you think. It's what you got, and it's what you got to live with. And so it's your choice to decide whether or not you want to take the radical or right action to live in harmony with it or not. I wrote about MS as my biggest teacher in my book, Shadow Summit. And I got away from some of those teachings. And so I've dived back into it, and I'm going full bore to try to heal a second time.
Jon, I've followed your story online. I find your posts incredibly inspiring. Why do you choose to keep sharing your journey with others?
Why do I keep sharing my journey with others? I think it's all about hope. It's all about what this podcast is all about: hope and health. I feel I've got a story that can give hope to others. And there's at this point, that's the most important thing in my life, is to be able to leave others in a better state than they were when I met them. And that's what I'm driven to do. I'm driven to leave people in a better state and leave as many people in a better state as I can.
That's incredible. And one thing, Jon, for me, which I struggle with sometimes, is people who do have full mobility and have the ability to be able to exercise whenever they want and choose not to. And I see some of your posts where it's like, I can tell how hard some of the things you achieve must be. I can read into the images you post, and and what you have to overcome to achieve the things you do and to share the story. Why? What keeps you going?
What keeps me going? So I've got a father who's 92, or will be 92 in the summer. And he lives a great life. He lives a great life. And that allows me to say, there's still a lot of life to be lived. I've got a son, and I want to see my son go through all the stages of life, or as many as I can. And love, love is a big factor. I've had love in my life. I've been married. That didn't work out. But, I have muses in my life who are motivating me to improve my health. And so that love energy, whether it's, love with another or love of self, is a huge force that drives me, Matthew.
Having been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1994, we were diagnosed around the same time of life. And I know how challenging it can be to live with this disease and how hard it is to maintain those disciplines. I'll just be frank, it's not an easy life. It's not. And I think that, how do you, at this stage of your life, in your early 50s, how do you make sense of it?
It just is. And, I'm not a bad person. I didn't do anything wrong to get this, I got mono young. Vitamin D is an issue with me and how my body creates it. And so that affects my nerve growth. But the thing that I control, the one thing that I can control is what I put in my body. And I think the one thing that we know now, especially from I've been reading the book, The Face Laughs While the Brain Cries by Dr. Stephen Hauser. And he basically discovered B cells and the B cell inflammation allergic reaction that leads to the demyelination. And so that whole theory is demyelination is caused by some kind of allergic reactive agent. And so what I have to do is I have to keep those reactive agents out of my body. So how do I stop ingesting those foods that I know cause an allergic reaction? That's one thing. And then how do I stop the foods that lead to inflammation, which is sugar? Okay. And the American diet is rife with sugar. We eat, like 20, 30% of our calories at least are from sugar, if not more. And all that is doing is causing inflammation. And so if you want to turn off the two things of allergic reaction and inflammation, if you want to stop those two things to live a better life, watch what you ingest. Like, this is not rocket science. This is like the ABCs,
Well, and I think, obviously, me, and you know that I'm a huge proponent of nutrition and how it can impact chronic illness. But I think I think for a lot of people, it's a huge challenge to be able to stick to the program. And in that, if you had a chance to speak to your younger self, what would you say?
Yeah, because I look at you, like, Matthew, I look at you and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had done what I did the way you did when you were first diagnosed in 94, I would have saved myself all those years of suffering. Like, I would save myself tremendous suffering. That's one thing I would say to myself is, Jon, watch the suffering and really take a look at your life to look at the things that cause suffering, like an unhealthy diet, like different substances, different drugs, alcohol, whatever. They can cause like dependencies, whatever. Those things take you off track from realizing your highest potential as a human being. And that's what that's what I do as a coach. My Vibrant You system, Vibrant You Academy, assists people to become their highest self, their most self-actualized self.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage in your life, do you see being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis as a gift?
I do. Funny answer. It is, because it's a gift that's made me more unique and set me apart as an individual than anything else that I can think of might otherwise have. It is a gift, to your point, Matthew. It is a gift.
I don't necessarily think it's just for people with multiple sclerosis, because I remember very deeply when I was probably around 20, 21 years old, when I really had done the deep dive on the science and how the body worked and what was going on and how food and exercise and the way you think affected your long-term outcomes. I distinctly remember thinking, oh my gosh, my friends are going to start coming back to me in their 40s and 50s when disease comes around. Because if you don't do this, it's just a countdown. It doesn't matter who you are, you're getting something.
You nailed it. And, the clients that I have coaching with Vibrant You Academy, I coach on this system of well-being, and they're reversing some of their symptoms, and they're just getting laser focused in life. And that's the thing. Like MS, the gift is it allowed me to get laser focused. I mean, I'm a strong, rational guy anyway. I mean, where I went to school. And the mind drives so much. And we can create our reality. And I think so much of us are just reacting to that shiny object that we think that we're entitled to, and not really having the right consistent practices that allow your most elevated self to naturally emerge. Because I think we all want to live our most elevated life. I don't know of anyone that says, I want my life to be down here. I just want to bumble and stumble along, and I want to waste time, and I want to chase my tail, and I want to be 50 pounds overweight, and I want to be, depressed. No one says that. Everyone aspires to this, but yet, do they really want to instill the daily practices that it takes to live here? Maybe not. I would say not, because people don't, and if they wanted to, they would. But you know what? They don't. And so they're actively choosing not to live their most elevated self.
Well, and I think the term I use is optimal health. And I think that,
Yep.
what I've learned in my journey is that, let's just say even there was a pill tomorrow that cured MS.
Yep.
I don't think I'd change my lifestyle. I don't think I would change my diet. I don't think I would change my exercise plan. Okay, that's a lie. I might have the odd pizza, but
Yeah.
but
Come on.
but more or less, I wouldn't change anything, because I know these disciplines are going to keep me away from all sorts of other health concerns. And I think that what I see is that it's a choice that discipline is a choice for people. And when they're ready for it, they're ready. And sometimes it takes a big push, which is disease.
Yep. I fully agree.
What's next for you, Jon? Where's this journey going to go? And what can we look forward to when we check out your social media accounts?
Great. So what's next is I'm full bore. I'm full bore on this lifestyle, and I don't know how long it's going to take. My goal, I want to run again. And people watch me. I say that in my morning walks all the time. And people watch me now, with my stick, hobbling with my sticks and my stilted walk. And people are like, oh yeah, laughing under their breath, like, yeah, this guy's going to run again. But that's what I'm going for. I don't know how long it's going to take. Is it going to take 5 years? I don't know. It's going to take 10 years. I don't know. But that's where I'm going.
Jon, I want you to run again too. And just so you know, what you're posting, for me, what you're putting out there is so important. I want to encourage you to keep going, keep inspiring. I hope that this interview, that your story reaches thousands of people, that you're demonstrating that you can recover, that healing is possible, and your perspective is going to change lives, your own and others. So again, Jon, thank you so much for joining us today, and I wish you the absolute best of luck in the future.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Matthew, you are such an inspiration for me. You really are. I follow you all the time. So thank you for the light that you bring into the world.
Thanks for joining us. Hope and Health is made possible through generous donations. To learn more or support the show, visit mshope.com, where you'll find free science-based resources.